Irving Roth, at age 10, has memories as well. What deeply concerns me here in 2015 is that a man who was a survivor of Auschwitz for the second time in his life has to hear rhetoric that reminds him of his age of 10. These are truly sobering times, and he will tell you things of his life that will captivate you. You will be riveted, and I hope your passion for Israel will soar after you hear from our next speaker. Let us give him a warm San Angelo welcome, Mr. Irving Roth.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to thank you for inviting me to this lovely city. I've never been here before. I did enjoy some of the scenery, particularly the buildings from many years ago. The synagogue that we passed by. Today, as was mentioned more than once, and the song so magnificently sang, Yerushalayim Shazahav, Jerusalem of gold. Today is Yom Yerushalayim, the day for Jerusalem. More than 40 years ago, Jerusalem was reunited. For more than 2 decades before that, Jews were not allowed to go to the wall, to the Western Wall. It was occupied by an Arab nation. It's a day to celebrate. But today for me is a sad day in a way. It's sad because last week, Wednesday, a terrible event happened. From my perspective. The leader of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, embraced Abu Mazen and called him and declared him to be the angel of peace. I was shocked. How is it possible that a man whose PhD thesis was that Holocaust never happened to become suddenly an angel of peace? How is it possible that a man a year ago deliberately scuttled the peace conference between Israel and the Palestinian people by joining hands with Hamas? That organization whose total and complete objective is the destruction of the Jewish people. The total and complete annihilation of the state of Israel. How is it possible that a man who is taking Israel to the International Criminal Court for human rights violation after Israel defended itself against Hamas and the thousands upon thousands of rockets that he fired into populated civilian areas of Israel? All that makes him, in the eyes of the man who leads over 1 billion Catholics, an angel of peace. Has the world gone crazy? My friends, I cannot remember when things were not that much different. It was August of 1933. A concordat was signed by a gentleman from the Vatican who eventually becomes Pope Pius XII Patriarch. The concordat he signed was with Nazi Germany, not only recognizing that they exist, but cooperation. You see, the Catholic Church cooperated. My friends, the concordat states very clearly that every priest, every bishop, and every cardinal living in Germany will sign a document supporting the Nazi regime. My friends, I cannot actually remember 1939. I was 10 years old at the time. Late spring of 1939, a Roman Catholic priest became the president of Nazi Slovakia. I know that very clearly because immediately upon his ascension to that very esteemed position of president, laws against the Jews began to be promoted and promulgated. My friends, it was the summer of 1939. I'm 10 years old, almost, not quite. I get up in the morning, it's summertime, I'm on vacation. What do? I go and play with my friends. And that morning, I get up to meet my friends, Jews and non-Jews alike, in the park. But I can't go in because there is a sign. Jews and dogs are forbidden to enter. I, a 10-year-old, cannot go into the park because I'll be arrested. Under the leadership of a Roman Catholic priest. The total and complete disenfranchisement of the Jewish people in Slovakia began to happen. Slowly, step by step, my friends, one law after another. Laws that I fully understand because it affected me. I lived in this country, I lived in this city, I lived in this beautiful little city of 7,000 people, totally integrated city before 1939. I went to school. I went to a public school like every other child in town, whether you be a Jew, a Catholic, Protestant, Russian Orthodox, or even Gypsy. I liked school, actually. Actually, I began to like school the first day. Now, let me tell you why. As I came to school, my first class, I'm 60 years old, I look around the class, and the first thing I sort of notice as I scan it, there is one very beautiful, gorgeous little girl. I was precocious that way. It took me 3 months to go over and say hello to her. It turns out she lived not too far from my house. She was also a Greek Orthodox. And I was a Jewish child. Well, it didn't bother me too much about it. She was gorgeous. It took me about 3 months before I did that. And so I began to talk to her, and then by the end of the first year, I carried her books. By the end of second year, we did homework together. And so on and so forth. I loved school. I also liked playing soccer. And I will brag to you about that because I was very good. I was the best defensive fullback they had in years. And as a result of course, I played every game. I would say that was the number 2 or 3 passion. You know what number 1 was. I live in a house. It's a lovely house. It's a good-sized house, owned by my grandfather, and as such, my grandparents my parents and my brother and I lived in the same house. And that too I observed very early in life. It's easier to manipulate grandparents than parents. It was amazing. I would say to my father, I want a new soccer ball, and he says, you have an old one, it still works, it's not leaking, what do you want? No. So I told my grandfather how much I loved him. And so all of you young people, this is a lesson in how to manipulate grandparents. It's a lovely city. It's a very modern city for its day. We had the sidewalk. It's not like Fiddler on the Roof, those of you who've seen that movie. No, there was no mud in the streets. There were paved streets, and there were sidewalks, and there were stores, and we had tennis courts, and an ice skating rink in the winter time, and a beach area in the summertime. Tennis courts, the whole 9 yards. And so I live in this wonderful place, in the house with my parents and my older brother. There's one other person who lived in our house. My nanny. I started life with a nanny. Now the reason I started off in a nanny, not because my mother wasn't home, because I had an older brother. He was 3 years old when I was born. And my parents realized very early, he may not like the idea to have this little interloper. He was king. He was the absolute king of the house. He ran the place. He was the oldest grandchild. I mean, after all, he was the king. And so my parents were worried about the fact that he may not exactly be crazy about the idea. He played with these toys and break them. And all that, nothing. And so my parents decided to get a nanny. I loved my nanny. My nanny was Catholic. But she lived in our house, of course. And that too was an added benefit, my friends. Why? Because as a Jewish child, I get presents for Jewish holidays. But having a Catholic living in your house who has a Christmas tree at Christmas and all this other stuff, I also got presents on Christmas holidays. My friends, life was beautiful. You know the movie? This is where I begin my life. But by the winter of 1939, my nanny is packing up and leaving. I said to her, as every child will tell you, the reason she's leaving because you misbehaved. And so I said, I'm going to behave from now on. But just don't go. She says, no, I can't live here anymore because I am not permitted. As a Christian woman, I'm not allowed to live in a Jewish household. And certainly not work here. To me, it was trauma. Another piece of personal trauma. This government of Slovakia passed laws against the Jews. One of the laws was the Jews are not to own or wear any iron, which is a luxury. And certainly a fur coat would be a luxury. That gold earrings and gold chain are luxuries, and Jews must not own it. I have a sheepskin jacket. Probably here you never saw one. It's too warm here, right? It looks suede on the outside and fur on sheepskin on the inside. It's a luxury, my friends, and I, a 10-year-old, have to take my jacket and deliver it to the police department. The folks in New York, I tell usually the students, imagine for a moment that for Christmas you got a pair of Uggs. You know those are? Those very warm, nice. And imagine on the 2nd of January you walk into school because you want to tell people what you got for Christmas. And there stands a policeman and looks at you, you redhead, take those Uggs off. Redheads in America are not allowed to own Uggs. He says, what? Yes. These are difficult moments for me. And there are other few things done similar to all that. I can't go out at night, neither can any Jew. I have to wear a yellow star to be identified, not as Irving Roth, as a Jew. In fact, my identity as an individual human being is lost. All people look at is my star. But my friends, it affects not only by law, not only the police department, relationships. In my particular case, it's the spring of 1940. I'm walking home with my friend, carrying her books. She turns to me and says, Irving, we can no longer walk home from school. You can no longer carry my books. In fact, I'm not allowed to speak to you. I said, what did I do? I didn't buy you a present for some holiday? No. My father told me not to be so friendly with a Jew because socially we will become ostracized. The separation of the Jew from a non-Jew in the social and eventual economic and every other way. The next moment of trauma, it's September. First day of school, I get up in the morning like every other 1st of September, get dressed off to school, I go, I know where I'm going because I was promoted in June. I get to the gate of the school and there is the principal, looks at me, Roth, you can't go in. Why? Because you're a Jew. Every Jewish child and every Jewish student, whether he be at elementary school, nursery school, or a college graduate, or in the doctorate program, in the whole country, was thrown out on that day. Not only the students, every single Jewish teacher in the whole country was fired on that day. In fact, very soon, every single Jew working for the government in any way at all, in any shape or form, whether it be a street cleaner or be director of a major organization like my mother's cousin David. He was the director of Social Security for the whole region. He was fired because he was a Jew. He was humiliated from the corner office out to the street. The humiliation was too much for him. He committed suicide. So I didn't go to school that day. I decided I'm going to go play soccer with my friends. I get to the field and the coach tells me they decided they don't want a Jew on their team. Mind you, that wasn't even the law. There was no specific law which says a Jew or a Jewish child can be on a soccer team. But the hatred penetrated their soul, their mind, and their hearts. My friends, and it continues. Jewish attorneys can no longer practice law. Jews can no longer own a business. My father had a business, a lumber business. He produced something called railroad ties. 50, 100,000 each year. Ship them all over Europe, including England. And now he will lose his business. Why? Because he is a Jew. So my father decides to invite one of his very, very dear friends. Albert was his name. He was not Jewish. And so he suggests to Albert that they change the name of the business from Roth to Melesnik. A new stationery, signs on papers, and now the lumber business that my father owns is no longer a Jewish business, and therefore no one can take it away. Albert, having been a friend for decades, has no problem with that. Whatever you want me to sign, Joe. We've been friends for all these years. This whole thing must disappear eventually. It's not right that your business should be taken away from you. 3 months go by, and Albert, a friend, comes over to my father, asks him, Joe, how's business? My father says, thank God, it's great. Much needed for railroad ties all over Europe. He says, I'm glad to hear that because I want half the profits. And a few months go by, and one day Albert comes into the office and tells my father, Joe, I like the way you're running my business. I'm not going to fire you. You can continue as a manager, but the business is mine. The profits are mine. Betrayal. Betrayal by friends. And so, by the time 1941 comes along, Europe has changed. In what way? Well, Europe has now attacked Poland in 1939, and there's no more Poland. They attacked Belgium and Holland and France. And by 1941 spring, Germany has occupied or is in allied relationship with every country of Europe. From the Atlantic Ocean right to the Soviet Union, from North Norway all the way to Greece. And now it's acquired millions of Jews. And so decide, it's time not just to persecute the Jews. It's time to get rid of them. And so they organize something called an Einsatzgruppen. It means people who volunteer, basically, whose job it is to learn how to fire a machine gun, go into villages, towns, and cities all over Eastern Europe, get the Jews together, march them out into the forest, and machine gun them. It's the beginning of the final solution to the Jewish question. And so, my friends, beginning in the summer of 1941, when Germany, which, by the way, had an ironclad agreement, you may have heard of it, it's the Molotov-Ribbentrop Non-Aggression Pact. But remember, Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, were bullies. And so in June of 1941, Germany attacks the Soviet Union, penetrates deeply to the Soviet Union, more Jews, and they begin the process. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of Jews are murdered on a daily basis. In fact, the city of Kiev, and you know that's in the news because that's the capital of the Ukraine, 33,000 Jews were murdered in 3 days. That is going on. By whom? Who are these people who are murdering men, women, and children en masse? Ordinary men. Doctors and lawyers and teachers and pharmacists and farmers and business people volunteered to commit mass murder. But as they look at the numbers, they're very disappointing. The numbers of people they managed to murder. Why? Because for every Jew they have to fire machine guns, and it takes money to do that. The people who are murdering, have to get paid, they have to leave. And so, in the whole year, all that were gone is 1 million Jews. And the 10 million more. Oh, so my friends, they organized a meeting, a conference it's called, in a place called Wannsee. Those of you who have ever been in Berlin, right outside of Berlin, there's a suburb called Wannsee. And so in this magnificent villa, on the 20th of January of 1942, a conference is convened with scientists and engineers, with chemists and transportation experts, and military personnel, and the single item on the agenda is how are we going to get rid of all the 11 million Jews in the shortest possible time at the least cost. That's the item on the agenda. And this brain power in 90 minutes, come up with a solution. They'll build death camps, consisting of gas chambers and crematoria and possibly a rail track coming in. They'll bring the Jews from all over Europe, from Greece and from Norway, from France and from Poland. Murder them by gas, burn their bodies, and nothing will be left of the Jews of Europe except ashes. And that, my friends, takes place in 90 minutes, after which this very esteemed group of educated men go to lunch. Incidentally, so these are, you think these are psychopaths. My friends, 1/3 of the group had PhDs. And so in the summer of 1942, in my town, which is about 2,000 Jews, there's a knock on every Jewish home. 1,800 are taken from their home to the synagogue. The synagogue was a small place, relatively speaking. There's no place to put 500 people. It would have been a full synagogue. In fact, on Yom Kippur, 500 people, it was jammed. Now you have 1,800 people. And besides, the synagogue itself is nothing but a room, a sanctuary. Lovely, but has no running water, has no bathrooms, has no air conditioning. It's the middle of the summer of 1942, stuffed in there for a day and a half. The Jews of my town, 1,800 out of the 2,000. A day and a half later, they marched up to the radio station, put into cattle cars, and they're gone. My school that had 300 Jewish kids, now there are 11. I am not taken. My family's left there. My grandfather, my grandma, my aunt. My aunts, cousins, uncles, gone. The Roth family is there. 3 months go by, my grandfather and grandmother are arrested. We get them out, and we know we're in trouble. So we must do something. And so we disappear. We get across the border to another country called Hungary. Hungary in 1942 and 43 did not ship its Jews anyplace. What they decided to take is the Jewish men, put them into a slave labor force, attach them to the army, and let them do all the work. Let them build the bridges, let them fix the roads, let them go and hunt for mines to make sure no Hungarian tank gets blown up. Families are left home, so they send food and work hard without the Hungarian government having to feed them. So I am in Hungary, in a small village with my grandparents, my brother. Total population of the whole village is about 250 people. My father and mother go off to Budapest. Why? Because my father needs a job. So off he goes and gets a job. Everything is fine because the Hungarians are not shipping the Jews anyplace. But by 1943, by the end of 1943, my friends, the American army has occupied all of Italy. The Russian army has pushed back the German army right into Poland and almost in Romania. The bombing of the cities, day and night. No question who's going to win the war. And I'm alive. I'm in my aunt's house. Wonderful. She's a very wonderful lady. Fantastic cook. My father and mother are in Budapest, and therefore the amount of supervision is limited. Which is quite nice. Waiting for the war to end. But in the spring of 1944, Germany, together with the Hungarian Nazis, decide all of Europe is Judenrein, free of Jews, except Hungary. And so in 53 days, 437,000 Jews are picked up from their home into cattle cars to Auschwitz. I am one of those trains. I arrive in Auschwitz. I have no idea what goes on there. The doors are slid open. I jump off the train. I look around. And what I see is guards. And they're screaming, "Heraus! Mach schnell! Get out quickly!" Take nothing with you. No suitcases, no bags. Fallen lines. In the distance, I see flames coming out of chimneys. My grandparents are separated from me. They marched to this building with the chimneys and flames. They don't know what it is. Many of them are separated, down a set of steps. They take a shower, they're old, but they're gassed to death. My transport had approximately 4,000 people, 4,000 human beings. 24 hours later, 3,700 were ashes, including my grandfather, grandmother, my aunt. My brother and I are lucky. We're selected to work, tattooed on my arm. Eventually I was assigned to work with horses, draining swamps and plowing the fields, and my friends, as a 14-year-old, that's very tough work. Besides that, I didn't know how to hitch a horse to a plow. I lived in a city, what do I know? On the diet of black coffee, soup at noon, and a piece of bread at night. Very hard work, very little food. I'm always hungry, I'm always tired, but there's one other aspect in Auschwitz, and that is called selection. Some nights we'll come home, and rather than being allowed to go into our barracks, get a piece of bread, wash up, go to sleep. No, we had to take a shower, which by itself would have been great, except for the fact that on occasion there'd be a doctor look at you naked and determine if you should continue to live. If he thought that you were too skinny, or you walked poorly, or your pallor was too pale, he would look at you for an instant of time, write down the number on your arm on a pad the next morning. You will be picked up to the gas chamber. Life and death, determined by a doctor in an instant of time. My brother and I survived. The Russian army is getting closer. By January of 1945, they're like 50 miles away. The U.S. has advanced into Germany. And one morning, we marched out on a death march. You march or you die. By the third day, you could go 50 feet and not see bodies. Finally, I wound up in a place called Buchenwald. Buchenwald was a concentration camp, which meant it had no gas chamber. But it had no food either. It was built for 5,000 people, and now there were close to 60,000 there. A boiled potato every second day was the ultimate. You could continue to live for a bit. The war is going on. But at the beginning of April, they start taking people away again on a death march. By this time, my brother was taken away, and I'm alone. I depended on my brother a lot. He was older by 3 years. He was much more spiritual than me. I would complain to him, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm cold during the death march. He would say, bad thinking. You need to be a bit more spiritual. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, say a prayer, say a psalm. He knew the psalms by heart, and he would say, just repeat after me. But in February of 1945 in Buchenwald, he was taken away. I have never seen him again. So I'm alone. Death marches begin again. I hide. One day I'm hiding, and I'm found by a guard with a dog, and I'm in front of the gate of Buchenwald, with 10,000 other Jews being marched out on a death march, hoping for a miracle. That day it was a miracle. With standing information, the guards are gathering on both sides of that huge column of men. The siren goes off. There's an air raid. The cities around Buchenwald are being bombed. Some of the airplanes are loitering over Buchenwald, and of course, the guards don't want to be exposed. So they lock the gates, put 5,000 volts into them, making sure they don't escape, and they go into bunkers to hide. By the way, from which they could see what's going on, because they had telescopes. that day. The area lasted all day long, and I survived another day. Next morning, nothing's happening. By 11 o'clock, all the guards are gone, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my friends, 2 American soldiers walk into my barracks.
Wow.
Liberation. My friends, these 2 battle-hardened soldiers, almost black and almost white, they looked at us. In this particular barracks were over 315-year-olds, weighing on the average of 75 pounds, skeleton shuffling. They never saw anything like it in their life. And so, immediately after they shed some tears, took everything out of their pockets they had to eat, and they went out and got us some food. And very soon, a jeep came with 2 big vats of split peas and pork.
Praise the Lord.
My friends, when I looked at these 2 soldiers, my friends, the Messiah just came. So in case you don't know what the Messiah looks like, there are 2 of them. And so I survived the whole. What do I do? I'm 15 years old. I decided the only reasonable thing to do after the war, of course, I'll go back to the village and see if anyone is there. Maybe my brother was taken away, he survived, maybe he'll be there. My parents, who I told you, they were not with me, they were in Budapest. Maybe they survived by some miracle. And so I get back. It's a long story how I get from Bochumwald to this little village, which is now again in Czechoslovakia. I actually describe it. I wrote a memoir, and we have a few of them out there in the lobby. I get to the village. The first person I see, I go over to him. Tell me, did everybody in the Roth family survive? He looks at me. No, Roth, oh yeah. I said, where? Points to a little house. I run over, I open up the door, and there's my mother. I say, hi, Mom. 15 years old, cool. My mother fainted. My parents survived.
Wow.
I need to tell you how they survived. My father, one morning, while he's breathing, he's not getting out of bed. And he looks like he has temperature. My mother calls a doctor. The doctor comes and says, get him out of it, get him to a hospital, into isolation. He has typhus. He's in a coma. He's going to die. Bring him to the hospital. Doctor examines it there and says, he's going to die momentarily. A night nurse, a Seventh-day Adventist Christian woman, looks at my mother. The woman is over 40 years old. She looks 100. Why? Her children are gone. Her husband is in a coma. What is she to do? And she wants to encourage her and tells her, don't despair. It's possible to come out of a coma. I have seen it. Even though he has typhus in isolation, I will take care of him. And not only that, I will speak to him. Because if you speak to a person who's in a coma, you keep pinching him and moving them, he might come to. And this angel every night sits by my father's bedside and talks to him. Pinches him, moves him around, makes sure he gets fed intravenously. Night after night after night. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by, but she's not giving up. And one night, as she's talking to him, suddenly she hears a voice. How long have I been asleep? My father comes out of a coma, he's fine. Within days he's being discharged from the hospital, has no place to go because now the Jews are being shipped out of Budapest. And if they don't have trains, they march them out on a death march. If they don't feel like it, they just shoot them and dump them into the Danube. No place to go. This wonderful Seventh-day Adventist, wonderful lady says to my parents, if you have no place to hide, I live not too far from here, but you can, I'll leave the door open. Sneak into my apartment, make sure no one sees you, because anyone sees you, tells the police there are 2 strange people in there, they'll come, arrest you, and shoot you. And so my parents get there. They sneak in. No one sees them. They fix up a hiding place just in case somebody comes and looks for Jews. And in fact, the police come and look for Jews. They don't find them. Even civilian Nazis come and look for Jews. They don't find them. And one night, there's a knock on the door. Into the hiding place they go. But it's not the police. Because this wonderful lady has a daughter who is married, has a child, and lives in the same apartment. One night, there's a knock on the door. The husband, the Hungarian Nazi soldier, comes home to his apartment for 3 days. And so, my friends, the wife, ingeniously, tells her husband about these two distant relatives are living with us. You know, the war and all that. And in fact, they had to escape because they're chasing after that, so they're actually hiding here. And you mustn't tell anybody, because if you do, the police will find them and shoot them in the courtyard. And if you want to go to bed with me tonight, you'll keep your big mouth shut. And so, my friends, my parents survived. He knew I was good. And so some Jews returned. Most Jews have no place to go. Why? Because they can't go back to Poland, because the Polish people don't want them there, because they're living in their homes. They took over their businesses. Into Russia you can't go back because Stalin is killing Jews on a daily basis. They remain in DP camps. Hundreds of thousands of Jews, men and women, no place to go. The world is close to them. They're in Germany, in the same camps, with better food. No place to go. They're trying to leave Europe illegally and get to a place called Palestine. But my friends, in 1945 and 46, the British controlled Palestine. And they made a resolution in 1939 saying no more than 15,000 Jews will be allowed to come in any year. But by this time they don't want any. A good portion of the British Navy is blockading the Jews from coming into Palestine. And through a set of miracles, November of 1947, the United Nations decides to partition Palestine into a Jewish state and into an Arab state. The Jews are ecstatic. Sure, Judea used to be all of Palestine, and Jordan too. Remember, 2.5 tribes lived there? They got half of Palestine, a small sliver. They're ecstatic. They declared a state in 1948, my friends. On that night, 6 Arab armies attacked Israel. Speaking of miracles, somehow they survived. The whole world, including the Arab world, would say, okay, before the war we lost, let's sit down and talk. No, my friends. War after war, terrorism after terrorism. The destruction of the Jewish state is the mantra of the Arab world. This, say you're occupying, so Israel decides to run a test. Small test, consisting of about 1.5 million people or so. So tell you what, the whole area of Gaza in 2004 or 5, we're going to pull out. We're going to leave all the economy that we have built here in these villages and towns here, and we'll leave, and you run the country. No occupation. But my friends, Hamas takes over in 2007. And what do? They run the country. Do they take the money that we and the rest of the world gives them and provide hospitals and schools? No. They build arms and ammunition. They infiltrate. They throw rockets. The destruction of the Jewish people is the only thing that matters. They spend millions of tons of building material to build tunnels under the border with Israel so they can emerge and murder civilians. That's what they do. This past summer, they attacked Israel. Thousands of rockets were fired into populated areas of Israel. And now, Abbas, this angel of peace, wants to take Israel to the International Criminal Court of human rights violation. Why? They bombed a school, a UN school. The fact that the UN notified and looked at that school, there were rockets in there, rocket launchers. That isn't the right. The most bizarre part of this whole thing is that all 50 days that took place of constant rockets, not one single photograph, not one single piece of newsreel showed Hamas firing a rocket. Don't you think that's kind of peculiar? We know thousands of rockets were fired. Hundreds were intercepted, fortunately. Yet, the news media did not see that. They only saw Israel. They have sold out, my friends. The news media lies. They lie. They have been bought. But my friends, the realization is by and large that Israel is strong and can defend itself militarily. And so in 2001, under the UN sponsorship, a bunch of NGOs had a conference in Durban, South Africa. The name of the conference was Eliminate Racism in the World. It is there they came up with a new idea. The UN. Israel is an apartheid country. There wasn't a single, this is inside the conference and outside. Israel is an apartheid country. Apartheid. We know what that is. It means separation. One group of people have all the rights and the other one has less rights. You have separate schools, if at all, for the underclass. Have you ever been to Israel? Have you ever gone into a hospital? Did you see a sign for Jews only? For Muslims only? For Christians only? No. The whole concept is bizarre. In the Jewish state, every single person is entitled to excellent medical care, regardless of who you are. Not only from Israel, people from Gaza and people from the quote occupied territory, people from Jordan, if they really have serious problems, where do they bring their children? Or the adults or anybody else? To Israel. Is there a question whether they get medical care or not? No. Syrians are coming across the border to get medical care in Israel. Ever been on a bus in Israel? It's usually full. But they know. Jews sit here. 20% of the population of Israel is Muslim. 20% of the student body of the Israeli universities is Muslim. How do you figure that's apartheid? None. Ridiculous. It's a story made up, propagated, and promoted by the papers, by the UN. And so you have to understand, and I'm a bit upset when the head of the Catholic Church makes one of the members who wants to work with Hamas with these murderers, and he's the angel of peace. But my friends, do I really despair? No. I'll tell you why. Because in 2015, there are 2.1 million Christians who are members of CUFI.
Hallelujah.
That's why. Because you're here tonight. Instead of watching football, came to hear Irving Roth tell you about his experiences. Because we have thousands upon thousands of pastors and clergymen in America who have approached to help Israel. I'm not saying it's not my problem as they did in 1938 and 39. We are here. So my friends, my request, support CUFI. Join CUFI. Tell your children who are in the college campus today, which is inundated by professional agitators, make-believe students from Muslim Student Association, or Justice for Palestine, or any one of those names. They're trained professionals who are on the college campus to tell the American students in the colleges how evil the Jews are. There are about 100 and some odd universities that have chapters of these people who are trying to convince the American student of today about the evils the Jews perpetrate. Sure, they sent a bunch of people to Nepal, but that's a reason. They didn't do it because they care. It's because it's propaganda. When the earthquake took place in Haiti, within a matter of hours or maybe a day or two, Israel sent a complete hospital system to take care of those who needed help. What did the Arab newspaper say about that? Do you know why? It's not out of any concern of people, but they went there in order to harvest body parts.
Oh.
That's the problem. Lies, unfortunately. And so the college student, your child, your grandchild, the college system gets fed these lies. And so CUFI on campus is there to counteract all these lies. CUFI on campus tells the truth. Give them facts. And so, my friends, I want you to tell your children and grandchildren when they get into college that they'll be fed propaganda and lies. Just like Nazi Germany said, every problem in the world is caused by the Jews. In fact, in one of the newspapers, the Stürmer, every single time it came out was the name of the newspaper, and then the bottom there was a large block letters about yay big. The Jews are our misfortune. The same propaganda repackaged. And so I trust in the American people. I trust in CUFI. I trust that they'll be able to overcome. And I want to tell you, I've been working with CUFI for about 6 years. It's been a privilege. And so I would like you to support CUFI, tell your children and your grandchildren. And with God's help and your support, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people will continue to live. Thank you very much.
Irving Roth, ladies and gentlemen. Irving Roth. I have a question for you, sir. The national anthem of Israel, the name of which is Hatikva, which means the hope. What does that mean for you?
Hatikva has been around for decades, really late 18th century. But it was changed when the state was born. 2 words, Shnat Alpine. After 2,000 years of praying daily 3 times to return to Jerusalem, after hoping and praying, with God's help, miracle, the Jews have returned. Those are the words of the Hatikvah. The hope and prayer and reality that the world will recognize that the Jews have a right to live in their own homeland. Just like the French or anybody else. For some reason, did anybody ever question why Hungary is allowed to have their own state? Well, of course they do. What questions? Oh, by the way, Hungary they're not original from Hungary. They're from Mongolia. So how come we don't question that? The Czechs living in the Czech Republic have never been a country before 1918. So how come we don't question it? Because they're not Jews. Anti-Semitism has been around for a long time. It's a sickness. And so we sing the Hatikvah. There's the hope and prayer that the world will finally recognize the right of the Jewish people to their homeland. And with folks like Kufi, it's happening, the support is there. In Israel, in the United States, and just as a comment, when Kufi reached the 1 million mark of members, I was at a event where Pastor John Henry spoke. And glowingly said about the fact in about 4 or 5 years or so they've been in existence, we went from a group of about 220 people to 1 million. But our job now is to get the other 49 million evangelical Christians to join us. So be one of those who join us.
Make sure you get his memoirs. They'll be out there waiting for you to receive them. And now approaching the stage is Hunnicutt. Where is she? Is she here? Here she comes to sing us Hatikvah, the hope.
Hi, my name is Carly Schatz. I moved to San Angelo about a year ago, and I currently work at Shannon Clinic. It's great to be in Texas. I'd like to thank you all so much for coming out here tonight. Without further ado, will you please stand for the Israeli National Anthem?
Oh Lord, may be seated for just a minute. Amy, would you come up here and join us? Pastor Allen, please come as well with Amy. Just wanted to let you know what was raised for Kufi on campus and also for the Jewish community here in the city of San Angelo. The generous people in this room raised, and this will be split between the two, $9,034.
Thank you all. I know it's getting late on Sunday night, but I just wanted to tell you what half of $9,000 means to Congregation Beth Israel. We are luckily, well, first of all, luckily the predecessors of Congregation Beth Israel were very good with investing, and so we have about 7 or 8 years worth of expenses barring any natural disasters. But half of $9,000 gives us over a whole year of our expenses. So I cannot thank you all enough.
Praise God. Don't forget to go and get some information from Kufi. Also, Mr. Roth's memoirs are out there, and he's going to be signing some books as well. If you just want to slip by and shake his hand. On the way out tonight, as you're dismissed, Dr. Irish here has agreed for the orchestra to play again Jerusalem Call as you leave tonight. God bless you.